I would also like to inform you that we stream all of our sessions on YouTube, Literary Club YouTube channel, so that if anyone misses any of our talks, they can always go back and refer. We'll be sharing the link with you as well once the talk is over. So I kindly request a couple more minutes of your time till Prashant sir joins in. Thank you. Okay, Shreya, Prashant sir has joined. Please take over.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Shreya, you are.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Esteemed curator of the Literary Club and a mentor for us all, Professor Prashant Sanha sir, respected speaker, Ms. Kirtana R., members of the Literary Club, and all of you attendees. After the previous sessions on Sylvia Plath's poetry by Dr. Chitra Sridharan and 100 Years of Mrs. Dalloway by Professor Vijay Madke, we now enter the space of digital humanities, a new and thus comparatively less explored area. I welcome all of you to the 54th session of the Literary Club in association with the LTI Pune chapter, the Alumni Association of the Department of English and CLS, Saurashtra University, Rajkot, and the School of Humanities, MIT ADT University, Pune. Let me quickly take you through the structure of the session. We will begin with the talk by our distinguished speaker who will speak on the topic Rethinking Disability, Connecting Theory, Action, and Real World Stories. The talk will be followed by a Q&A interaction round and the curator's remarks. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Ms. Kirtana R. She is a dedicated English scholar pursuing her PhD at Welltech Rangarajan Dr. Sagunthala R&D Institute of Science and Technology in Morai, Tamil Nadu. Her strong academic background includes a master's in English and a bachelor's from the University of Madras. Highly passionate about innovative teaching, Ms. Kirtana also has experience as a secondary school teacher and teaching volunteer, making contributions to lesson planning, student assessment, and academic development. Her research interests span disability studies, environmental literature, and intersectionality. Ms. Kirtana actively engages in scholarly communication through publications and conference presentations. She is also an editorial member of journals like the Journal of Inventive and Scientific Research Studies and Literary Enigma, the Journal of English Language, Literature, and Culture, where she is deeply committed to advancing academic discourse in English language and literature. Ms. Kirtana has also acted as a resource person for various talks and workshops, furthering her commitment to both learning as well as teaching. We are fortunate to have you today with us, ma'am. Now, the moment we have all gathered here for. Disability studies is an emerging interdisciplinary area of study in the humanities that views disability in the context of culture and society instead of the traditional lens of medicine. Or at least this is what I understood from Britannica. Shortly, we have you, ma'am, with us, an expert who will enlighten us about this field.
Thank you.
I now hand over the stage to you as everyone is really excited to hear from you. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Shreya, for the wonderful introduction. I think I'm clearly audible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be presenting my slide. I hope the screen is visible. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, the session will be on rethinking disability, connecting theory, action, and real world stories. Myself, Kirtana, research scholar from Welltech University, Chennai. And first, we will know about what is disability. See, what is disability? First, let's distinguish between the term disability and the impairment. See, when we talk about the word impairment, it is the physical and mental model or something that is connected to sensory condition. And disability is again divided into the social model and the medical model, which we will be discussing in the post time. Okay, when I was talking about disability, we have under the social model, it is the barriers that the society creates, like the inaccessible spaces, negative attitudes of the people who are around them, and lack of support. See, that prevents them as impairment by participating, by reviewing their participation. For instance, take a wheelchair person who is disabled, not by their own disability to walk, but by the absence of the ramps or the elevator. See, this contrasts with the older medical model, which treated disability as a personal defect. That is, see, when in the medical model, people with disability should be cured or fixed rather than a social issue. That is where the concept of disability evolved.
In this slide 2, I will be also giving an introduction for what is disability, like what are the major periods that contributed to the disability. In the history of disability is very complex and it has varied across cultures and eras. As I was discussing, see, any movement has varied throughout the eras and movements. And brief overview of the key shifts would be in the Asian and medical view, disability is linked to religious or moral beliefs. People with disabilities were sometimes viewed as a punishment from a god, or they were also viewed as a punishment, or they were they were seen as a character which are possessed by the demons, or as a omen. See, attitudes were not uniform when people were talking about disability. Some cultures like ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt provided support for the people with disability. Many thought they were people of the other community, or they were treating them as irrespectful. When we come to the Middle Ages, that is, some religious institutions offered care to them, but people with disability often had to resort to, like, they were begging for their own responsibilities. See the situation, or they were seen as the object of charity. See, when we go to the other moment, that is the enlightenment and the rise of institutions, see, rise of the scientific thought in the 17th and 19th, 18th century marked this, and disability began to be seen as a defined affliction and more as a medical or biological problem. See, this led to the creation of asylums and the institutions, which is prevailing now, and which were this sometimes for human treatment. Often the people were isolated and segregated people with disabilities from the rest of the society. And when we talk about the other eras, that is the Industrial Revolution, early 20th century, 1960s, 1980s, 1990, and the 21st century, we have other models. Like the earlier 20th century, we had the medical model, which I told disability as seen as a personal tragedy. That is, it need to be cured. And when we come to the 1960s and the 1980s, this period, disability people themselves began to challenge their own framework. That is, the period was inspired by civil rights and feminist movements, which they organized by demanding their own recognizations. And this gave rise to the medical, this gave rise to the social model, that is the model. And according to this model, disability is not caused primarily by a person's impairment, but by the barriers that are created by the own society. And when we talk about the 21st century, today our understanding of disability continues to evolve. See, disability is increasingly seen as a matter of human rights, justice, and inclusion. But the concept of universal design is creating an environment that is more accessible for people with disability, but not to that some like the greater extent, but to some extent. See, this is when the time we had the CRPD, that is United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, which was adopted in the year 2006, that have helped to establish disability rights as an international standard. See, at the same time, we had many newer frameworks, like we had new frameworks like the disability justice, disability aesthetics, which all emphasize the intersectionality, recognizing how disability will interact with race, gender, sexuality, and class. In other words, disability is no longer a medical model, but it is a social, cultural, or political issue that requires the change in the system. Since we have gone to the issue of the disability, now we will move to the models of disability. I here have a comparison table on the models that are available. Before that, I would like to know whether I'm clear, my audio is clear, everything. Am I in
Yes,
the
ma'am.
track?
Yes, ma'am. We are able to hear you
Yeah,
clearly also, and we were able to follow the history also that you just presented.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yes, what are the models of disability? See, when we talk about the models, we have various models like the medical model, which is limited to the individual. We have the social model. We have moral religious model. We have human rights model. We have biopsychosocial model and the cultural model. See, when we talk about the medical model is the oldest and the most dominant framework in the context of modern Western society. It sees disability as a defect in their body that needs to be cured or either fixed. And here, in this model, the impairment itself is the cause of disability. For instance, if a person has a spinal cord injury and cannot walk, the injury is seen as a reason and they are disabled. The solution here is offered through medical interventions like surgery, therapy, assistive devices, or rehabilitation for normalization. And the language here often used as suffering from or confined to a wheelchair, which reinforces their view. And however, activists are working on this as well, strongly criticize that this model because it very poorly pathologizes the people of the disabled community and puts the entire burden of adaptation on the single person who is disabled. And it disempowers the individual by making medical professionals their experts in their lives, and it encourages pity instead of right or inclusion. That is the medical model. That is the impairment itself is the problem here, to be very precise. When we come to the social model, in contrast here, the social model emerged in the 1970s from the disability rights movement. The core idea of this is the core idea here is the people are not disabled by their impairments but by the society. As I mentioned, if the person is in wheelchair, if the building or the institution does not have a ramp or elevator, that is the problem with the society and not with the people. That is the society's inaccessible structure and the attitude and the discrimination we show among the peer ones. And the moral and the religious model is that this is one of the oldest framework in human history, where the moral or religious model interprets disability as the result of divine will or moral failing. Disability is seen as a character of sin, karma, or spiritual impurity. See, alternatively, it could be understand that it is a test for that it is a test from the God, whether the or the person is doing correct or wrong. It is connected to that extent to moral and the religious. And when we talk about the human rights model, building on the social model, the human rights model reframed the disability as a matter of justice and to bring the equality. Its core principle is to see people of the disability community are rights holders, not just characters of or the objects of pity or charity. If someone is excluded from the education or employment or any public life, that is a violation of the that is a violation of the human rights itself. And here, the cause of the disability is systematic, and it is because of the discrimination among the people and exclusion that undermines the dignity and equality. The solution here is we can come up with legal and policy reforms, with the most important example being I was talking about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, which was adopted in the year 2006. We can work with them and come up with the own laws or the policy changes. And when we talk about the biopsychosocial model, it is interaction of all this, that is medical and the social models. It views disability as a result of interaction between the biological factors, that is medical condition, biological factors, physical, psychological factors like these, such as person with mental health and environmental related, like which is in the social model. That is combining all of this. And in this model, by combining all this, we have a holistic approach of the person with disability. And when we come to the cultural model, in the cultural model, it emphasizes identity, community, and diversity. It sees disability not as something to be fixed, but as a valued part of human variation. For example, we have deaf culture. Deaf culture does not see deafness as a disability, but as a linguistic and the cultural identity. Similarly, we also have neurodiversity movement, where it celebrates differences such as autism, ADHD as part of their natural human diversity. Since if you work on research on disability, you can do research on all this, which are upcoming research topics. And the solution here is promoted by evolving their identity, by building their strong communication with the peer ones. That will be the solution of this particular model. See, of course, not everyone relates to this model, especially people with very painful or unwanted impairments relating to this, but it remains powerful for many communities as it reframes the context of disability as a source of strength and belonging. When we come to the key disability legislations and the milestones, in the 1817, we have the school event of American School for the Deaf, which was by the country United States. The significance is it is the first school for children with disability in the Western Hemisphere. This marked a very shift towards the formal education, and we have many such laws. Like in the 1907, we had the sterilization law. In 1920, we have a Smith-Fisk Act. Sorry for that. 1964, we had a Civil Rights Act, and in 1973, we had Rehabilitation Act, and in 1977, we had a Fine Art for Citizen Act, and in 1990, we had America with Disability Act. This is very, very important when we talk about disability. See, the point was happening in 1990 with the Americans with disability, the American Disability Act, and the ADA is often called the most important rights law in US history because it prohibited discrimination in employment, education, transportation, or in any public accommodations. And importantly, it made accessible that a legal right is not just a favor or charity, but it is used to reshape the or built environment and attitude towards the inclusion. And when we come to the 2006 UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, finally we have disability rights, which has become a global concern with adaptation of the United Nations conventions. And this treaty was ratified by over 180 countries that recognizes disability as a human rights issue, not as a medical problem. This is one of the last two are very important when we talk about the disability context. A critical analysis of disability in media and storytelling. So today we talk about the power of perception, that is disability in media and storytelling. Why is this important, or why is this a need of the art? Because the story we consume, whether they come from the media, television, film, or even the news, rather from anything, are not just harmless entertainment, but they actively shape how we see the world or how we treat the people and even what we consider as normal. When it comes to the context of disability, these stories have been especially powerful because they can either humanize and empower the people of the disabled, and they can also stigmatize, and this portrayals may also help the normal people or the people of the non-disabled community and exclude the disabled community. So this kind of portrayal plays an important role. What I want to show you today is how the representation has historically worked against the people with disabilities and how these stereotypes have been created and how they are being recycled, and why all these changes is very critical for achieving inclusion and equality. Once again, talking about the critical analysis of disability in media and storytelling. See here, a narrative has social constants. That is, let's begin with the narrative style to understand the context of disability in a very better way. See, narrative is never just a story. It is the social constant. And as I've mentioned it as narrative as social constant. Here, see, it reflects the value, the idea, the fear of the society itself through the portrayals. And when we look at disability in the media, we are not just looking at the characters on a screen, but sometimes we are looking at our mirror of societal attitudes. The way disability is portrayed tells us who is considered valuable, who is considered as a bad burden, or who is considered to be excluded. See, this is why the CRPD is very important. See, Article 8 of this particular CRPD especially requires states to raise awareness and to combat all the stereotypes that were pertaining on the disability, and to empower the media to promote person with disability in a very respectful and right-based way. That was mentioned in the Article 8. And that tells us the representation is not just a cultural issue, but it is very legal and ethical one. And when we talk about the weight of representations, now why does representation matter so much here? Because person with disabilities are disappropriately represented among the world's poor. They are one of the most marginalized group globally, and yet when you turn on the television or open a newspaper or watch a film, how often do you see a disabled character? That is a question. Or when do you do? How are they portrayed? If you see a disabled character, how they are portrayed? Or do you rarely see a disabled character? See, research shows that when disability does appear, it is often seen as a negative or stereotypical light, either as an object of pity or as a source of inspiration or as a villain. 1 minute. My slides are not moving. And this means that the stories we tell directly shape the opportunities and dignity of real people. If media portrays disability as a weakness, tragedy, or evil, society is more likely to exclude disabled people. And historical archetypes. Let's try to turn on the history. For centuries, disability has been represented through reductive archetypes. That is, let us take Tiny Tim from Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. With this crutch and the famous line, God blesses everyone. See, Tiny Tim became the classical symbol of the pitiful innocent, because someone whose purpose in the story is to just inspire charity and sentimentality, and the theme of sentimentality in others. Then we have Helen Keller, often celebrated for her intelligence and activism, but almost always framed in the media as an inspiration to overcome the tragedy of being deaf and blind. See, this created the stereotype of the super thrift, which is the idea that disabled people must achieve extraordinary feats just to be valued as common. See, on the other hand, we have characters like Captain Who, whose missing hand supposedly fuels his bitterness and villainy. And we have Oedipus Rex, whose blindness is tied to the tragedy and moral failure. See, these narratives link disability to evil, punishment, or misfortune. See, each of these narratives or archetypes tells us less about real disabled people and more about society's anxieties. They flatten human beings into symbols, innocence, inspiration, or danger, rather than full complex individuals. And when we come to the other representation, that is disability as comedy or shock, moving into the earlier cinema, that is disability often became a spectacle for entertainment, something to laugh or something to be shocked by. See, we have Thomas Edison's 1898 short film, The Fake Beggar, which depicted a man pretending to be disability, using disability as a comic device to or surprise the audience or the individual who is watching. Similarly, in Charlie Chaplin's City Light, also blindness is used for slapstick comedy and for a sentimental melodrama. But by culminating in a very happy ending when the blind character is you will see all these stories in the story with the character is cured or the character is fixed. See, these films reveal a pattern that disability is a drag, a temporary plot obstacle, or a device to create the emotion of the audience. Rarely it is portrayed as real or lived experience. Instead, it is something to be mocked, cured, or pretty. The problem is that when audience consume these images, they think that they begin to see disability as not as a diversity, but as a tragedy, comedy, or abnormality. Why is this context very much matter today? Now, some of you may be thinking, yes, but those are old stories. Haven't we moved past that? The truth, the truth here is many of these stereotypes still are persisting today. Think of the recent film where disabled characters are killed off to motivate the able-bodied protagonist, or think of a storyline which is about overcoming the impairment, or even think like this. Consider how seldom we see disabled people as heroes, leaders, or romantic leads. See, even in news coverages, we see disability often appears only in stories for tragedy, charity, events, or inspirational overcoming. See, this is very crucial and it is very urgent that we understand the issue. Representation matters because it builds the social imagination. If the only disabled people you see in the stories are pitiable or inspirational or villainous, you start to believe that disability is what it is. And but if media begins to portray disability as ordinary, complex human beings with flaws, strength, love, ambitions, then society begins to shift in the idea. That is the real power of the perception. To conclude that disability in media, in the context of disability in media, it is not a side issue. It is the essential issue of the society values the people. And when we come to the next slide, how are we going to connect these through the theory? To rethink disability, we need to understand the theories behind it. I hope I want to keep it as simple as possible. We are talking about the medical model, social model, and we have disability justice model. See, in disability justice, the problem is in system of oppression. That is, the solution is equity, intersectionality, and the inclusion. And for example, I will come out with the like use metaphors. For example, in medical model, we have doctor's lens. In social model, we have architect's lens. That is, I was talking about the lift. And in justice model, we have the activist lens. See, in which model do you think this dominates? Are you like you'll maybe working in a school, office, or any etc. Which model is very dominant in the particular organization or the place you are working? That is a question where you can think. And and when we connect to stories, see, one second. Yeah, we have a connecting stories. That is, I'll be talking about the some of the stories that portray disability. In one of the greatest tragedies of all time, we have Oedipus Rex, where King Oedipus is blind himself after discovering the horrifying myth that he has killed his father and he's married his mother. See, his blindness is both physical and symbolical. When he could see he was blind to the truth. When he blinds himself, he finally perceives the reality. See, the themes here are disability is equated with punishment and guilt. Blindness is used symbolically and not experimentally. The irony here is wisdom comes only after the impairment. And through this, the story of Oedipus, right, this reveals a long-standing problem, that is disability reduced to metaphor. Even today, we casually use words like blind to the truth without considering what is real blindness. See, the stigma that began in stories like Oedipus lingers in our language and the culture that is persisting even now. And when we come to the story of King Lear by Shakespeare, and here the Duke of Gloucester is betrayed and brutally blinded. And cast out on the suffering, he ironically begins to see truth and loyalty more clearly, guided by his disguised son, that is Edgar. See, again, blindness here is a metaphor. And Gloucester's physical impairment is not treated as a lived condition, but as a narrative design, like it is a device to teach lessons about loyalty, cruelty, and the justice. And here, the Gloucester is independent, pitiable, and guided by others in the story. His blindness reveals truth for everyone else, but his own humanity is overshadowed here again. See, the themes are disability as a moral lesson, pity and dependence dominant in the portrayal, and society's reality to the impact of ethical mirror. See, notice here in both Oedipus and King Lear, blindness is not about the blind person's experience. It is about teaching others. See, disability here is instrumentalized, not humanized. See, this truth survives even today in some of the films, novels that use disability character to inspire or instinct rather than to represent the real lives. And when we come to the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, here again the character in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the creature is rejected not because of his mind but because of the body. Society sees the character as a monstrous because of the appearance, but he longs for love, companionship, and acceptance. But because of the physical differences that makes others fear and reject him from the normal people. That rejection, uh, not his body, drives him into the isolation and the violation, like that to the violence, and how this is connected to the disability. See, scholars often read Frankenstein creature as a metaphor for disability, but his so-called monstrosity is constructed by society. It is not his impairment that makes him dangerous, but the stigma and the exclusion he suffers. Disability here reflects how society creates others out of the fear. Here, the themes are social rejection as true source of the pain, fear of difference equated with the danger, and society's prejudice plays a main role. And I also have some of the other characters, that is Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, where near the end of the Jane Eyre, Mr. Rochester is blinded and injured in a fire. When Jane returns, the relationship actually changes. Once he was the powerful master, she the Dependent governance now is blindness humbles him and they made as equals. And how it is connected to the disability is that this is one of the first sympathetic portrayal of disability in English literature. And we also have Ellen Killer, the story of my life, where disability is portrayed in the context of autobiography. And we also have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And we also have the curious incident of the dog in the night time, where it is a story of autism protagonist, how he manages to find out the one of the greatest incident that is happening in the story. And we also have everyday stories. That is, everyday stories, I mean, behind literature and cinema, there are also everyday stories, as I was mentioning. For example, a student with mobility challenges may be excellent in academics, or an artist painting with their feet may have some problems, and they may also bring home medals. See, the themes here are ordinary lives with extraordinary meaning. The social barriers matter more than the person who is disabled. Disability is a part of belonging, not the separation. See, when we talk about the stories from Oedipus to Jane Eyre, from Ellen Killer to Laila, we see a remarkable evolution in the context of disability. Disability moves from being a symbol of punishment and tragedy to humanity and equality. And I was talking about all the stories. What do you think these stories will teach us? See, disability is not it is not inability. It is another way of being human. If we listen clearly, that these stories do not just help us rethink disability; they help us rethink human humanity itself. So, what are we supposed to do? Maybe we can aim for the aim for the future would be schools with the universal design, workplace with inclusive hiring, community with the empathy, and for educators, teach inclusion, not just the theories, teach them inclusion. For students and young people, ask them to question the stereotypes. And for policymakers, stop treating this accessibility as an extra cost, make that as default. If in some places, if we have to use a particular thing, if we have to pay, that is not how the case is. It should be made default. And so to end with the session, as we move forward, remember that we don't need sympathy, we don't need them to be pitied. What we need is insolidatory, and because insolidatory builds the ramps, captions, jobs, and dignity. Dignity. And so I would want to leave with the powerful quote from the people of from the work of disability. I would say nothing about us without us. I think portrayals of the disabled people, like the disabled people from must be from their own community. For example, instead of making the non-disabled people to act like a disabled, we can have the disabled people to act in that particular role. That would be the main point. I hope I made this even clear. I'm open for the forum for questions. Before that, I would like to thank Literary Club for giving me such a wonderful opportunity. Prashant Singh sir, thank you for that. And ma'am, you were coordinating with me throughout the planning. Thank you for that. Any questions or anything to be addressed, I'll be happy to address the same. Yes, ma'am. Please, let's think someone has raised the question hand.
Actually, I had a question. In the today's world, it is we see it's very important to be politically correct, right? So, what is the language which is accepted or which is considered to be good in a way for somewhere describing people in such conditions, or is there some stigma related to language when it comes to this particular topic?
Oh, are you talking about like how should we address them? Whether we should address them as disabled people, or are you asking about the term, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Regarding the terms itself, yes. So, people
Yeah,
with disabilities, are we, I mean, if we use this kind of description, how encouraging it is, or somewhere how it is
see,
accepted?
it is acceptable to call them as impairment because disability is another big term. We can call this the people is impaired. That is accepted, and it is also used in many of the journals, novels. As I was reading about the disability, we can use the word impairment or impaired person.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, sir. Hello.
Yeah, I was listening to your session. So you were tracing the history, the way the disabled people are portrayed in literature.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I was curiously listening. You started talking about Oedipus, then you talked about Frankenstein, then Jane Eyre. So I was expecting the much more because you stopped in between the Victorian. What about after the modern and the
yeah, sir. I
the
was
new
talking about the
literatures?
curious incident of the dog.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'm talking about in between. You stopped. You were tracing the history of the disabled people in the narratives, especially
I want
novels and
me
stories.
to. Yes,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the
Why
novels
did
and stories,
what?
I thought no, I thought stop. Actually, it is a very vast topic when we start talking about the novels and other things. So it would be another one session where if we
Mhm.
have to talk about the works because the works after that have very minute things to talk. They are also concentrated more on the concepts of disability. See, we have trip cramp, we have inspirational bond, and other things to talk. So earlier it was only portrait of disability, but after that we have also the key points coming up in the contest. Maybe you can listen to my lectures. This is today I want to make a brief outline of the disability because if I use such terms like trip cramp, uh, if you know the topic, that would be fine. Because if I explain that topic, that would again be a big session.
Okay, okay, okay. Right.
Yeah,
Yes, Shreya, you have also raised the hand.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
Shreya,
ma'am. I was waiting for my turn.
yeah, yes, Shreya.
So, Kirtana, ma'am, you mentioned in the first slide that there was a lot of activity after the 1950s. So, I wanted to ask if this was related to all the post-war trauma and, given people were actually coming disabled home.
Sorry, I could not get you. No,
Uh, I'm sorry.
I could not get you actually.
Oh, I wanted to ask, you said that there was a lot of activity in disability movements and revolutions after the 1950s. So,
Yeah,
is this related to the post-war structure of how people and soldiers were actually returning home with injuries and all that?
yeah, that is also correct. But we also had other people. There were also people from that, but there were also people who are actually disabled from the earlier status as well. You are talking about the injured people who came from the war, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, they are also included. And after the 1960s, we had major of them. After the war, they started writing the poems. We had novels that in the context of war as well. We have also have some evidences for that.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, anyone else? You can even drop your questions in the chat box. So, I guess that is all. I would like to request Sanha sir and Madhya sir if they are here to provide their remarks on today's session.
I think I'll be talking at the end, no? Since I'm supposed to conclude the session.
Would Madhya sir say something now?
Now, please don't mute me. See, I'm
Yes,
constantly.
sir. Sorry, I was trying to pin you and accidentally got muted. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Madhya sir was here in the meeting earlier, but maybe his connection dropped off. So I'm not seeing him in the meeting anymore.
Okay. Well, I guess we can go ahead with Sanha sir's remarks then.
Shall I speak now?
Yes, sir.
I must say it was a very impressive talk and a very, very comprehensive talk because our speaker, Kirtana, referred to many aspects of the problem, beginning with the historical issues and then proceeding further. Then she talked about the different approaches to it and different ways of dealing with it. And she covered a long area. So I think in that sense, it was very, very impressive and very informative. I must say, is a very important part of the talk. Can I now say a few things which can be added to what she said? Of course, about the literary part, I must also mention that Kirtana talked about certain people that I had not uh, considered, such as the monster in Frankenstein, but that was a human creation. So, can I now add a few things? First of all, before we come to literature, let me mention that uh, now in sports, people with disability are going very far. We have big challenges, in fact, even the Olympics for them. So that is one major advancement over the last uh, century or so. So that's one thing we can't forget. Now to get back to the background of literature and how it was taken up in the works, I want to mention that both the writers and their characters had this. And this also related to the original Greek myths. Because remember, uh, Cupid was blind. And can you imagine uh, a lover being blind? But as I say, love is blind. Someone argued rather foolishly, love is blind, God is love, and therefore God is blind. I think that's a, a travesty of argument. Now, see, I want to mention that both the creators of the literary works or artistic works and their creations uh, showed blindness. See, obviously, the history that was the oldest and the disability that figured the most prominently is blindness. And as we further know, blindness is highly symbolic. It refers to the inability of certain people to look at the facts. Remember Tiresias, the famous Greek astrologer, cum soothsayer, when he comes and confronts Oedipus and he says, uh, you have eyes but cannot see. I don't have eyes but I can see. And that's exactly what happens at the end to Oedipus. He also is unable to detect and look at the facts. Also, don't forget that in Greek literature, Homer himself was blind. After all, Homer was the original poet, perhaps the most famous Greek poet, and Homer was blind. Uh, then coming to English literature, John Milton's creation was by a blind poet. John Milton, of course, was not born blind, but turned blind a little later. So, and in fact, when he wrote Paradise Lost, he already had lost his vision. I might come to the more recent periods and mention how even in modern drama, the other kinds of disability are prominent. For example, let's think of Bertolt Brecht, Mother Courage and the Children. Can you imagine that a drama, a play, will have a character who can't speak? Because drama is based entirely on dialogues or chiefly on dialogues. But in Mother Courage and the Children, our third child, the girl, Katrine or Katrina, is uh, is a deaf character. She can hardly, she can't speak at all. Of course, she was not born deaf, but the deafness is a result of the war and what happened during the war. See, but with Katrine, what happens is that she can hear. She is not dumb, but she is not deaf and dumb, but she is only a dumb. And actually, when she wants to speak, she shows a metal. In the last scene of Mother Courage, I mean, last but what scene, there uh, she uses a drum, and the drum becomes more potent, more powerful than the human voice. The drum is what awakens the city, which no voice could do. So I guess uh, literature is full of examples of uh, uh, disability, and we should also remember that many of these literatures had a different view of disability, but let's praise Kirtana for a wonderful talk, a very comprehensive talk, and a talk that was lucid and clear. Thank you all.
So thank you, and I'm grateful to hear from you. As you were mentioning about there were a handful of examples when we talk about disability. One hour, I don't think would be enough for talking about disability. I think I gave some justice to the topic. Maybe if you are interested, you can ping me. I would be happy to collaborate, and I would be happy to give examples. Someone was also asking about the examples from literature in the contemporary age. Since I'm working on literature, I am also working on the theories, and I'm working. My PhD title is like it is like I'm connecting disability with the gaming literature, where the people of the disability are healing from the their personal feeling through games. That is the online games. If you are interested, I can drop my mail ID. You can contact if the organization allows me. Otherwise, that is not a problem. I think I gave some justice to the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We have now come towards the end of today's session. I'm sure all of you had a great time today and will be excited for our future events as well. Meanwhile, you can connect on us on our blog and also on Instagram and YouTube as well. The links for them are shared in the chat box. So I would like everyone to turn on their cameras for a group picture now. Are we done?
Just a second, share. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. We have Kirtana ma'am's video also visible now. Just a second.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Yes, done, Shreya.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening ahead, and we will see you in our future sessions. Good day.